Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this week's Stay Connected webinar. We are very excited to have Amber Schiltz with us with NACEE, and I'm going to let her tell you about her organization and a little bit about the NACEE, what NACEE stands for and their mission and so on. But first, I don't want to forget to mention that if you are joining this webinar live or viewing the recording of the webinar, you would be eligible for professional development credit. So you can go to our Stay Connected website and find the information there for receiving a certificate of participation that we will send you, and then you will have that for your records. You can also sign up to receive updates about the Stay Connected series and more. We have a very large library of recorded sessions, and so peruse the list and the options, and let us know if there's a topic you're interested in, and we will look for a presenter or get some folks together. If you are interested in discussion on a topic, we can do that too. So I'm Kim Larson, and I am representing the Get Connected Conference After School Committee, and it's our pleasure to bring this Stay Connected series to you, and we thank you for joining us. So Amber Schiltz, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away. And Amber, thank you so much for your work. That's so important, and for sharing information with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you everyone for joining today. So I'm representing NACEE today. I wear a few hats, but I can speak to that soon. But the main thing, just for something tangible to take away from this, is that we're going to talk a little bit about the power of asking better questions and what our role is as educators. Really briefly, just if we haven't met before, a little bit of my own background. So again, I mentioned I wear two hats. So my day job is I'm the Fish and Wildlife Education Assistant Division Administrator of the Fish and Wildlife Education Division at Nebraska Game and Parks. It's a really incredible position. I enjoy working with that team, and our mission is to increase ecological literacy or environmental literacy, or just get kids and adults connected to nature across Nebraska. In addition to that, and part of my role, I'm able to serve also as the board president of NACEE. And I will talk mostly about NACEE today and what we are and how we are connected to this community. I have my bachelor's degree in fisheries and wildlife and a master's of arts in teaching biological sciences. So I really have that sweet spot. My passion is in the sweet spot of the world of nature and wildlife and science, but also the pedagogy and education and teaching and how to connect those two. So today I hope to cover these things. I know we have a short amount of time, but we'll do our best. So just really briefly, I just want to kind of define what is environmental education, recognizing that not everybody involved in after-school programming is also involved in environmental education, but you might find yourself in some of the roles you play in that definition. You may be surprised, maybe you are connected to that world of EE is what we call it. So looking at that, I'm going to speak about what Nebraska Alliance for Conservation and Environmental Education is, and really cool programs and resources you might find there. So that's kind of high level stuff, and then we'll go down into the content today. A little bit of a discussion of how does learning happen? What does learning even mean? You know, how do we define it in students? Talking a little bit about the learning cycle, and then drilling down further into asking questions, and just really trying to connect questions as a valuable tool for all of us as educators, after school coordinators, and really what our role is as educators. So hopefully we'll get those covered today. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I really like back and forth discourse in my presentations. I think that's really valuable. So feel free to do that. So first, just defining environmental education. This definition comes from the North American Association for Environmental Education. If you have not heard of this organization, it's a really incredible organization that meets the needs of environmental education practitioners across the country and actually across the continent. So they have resources, they have professional development, they have tools, they have so many things to help connect kids to nature if that's something you're doing in your role. So they define environmental education, and you can read it here, but you notice it says it's a process. It's a process that helps individuals, communities, and organizations to learn about the environment. Through EE, we can develop skills in children to investigate their environment, help them make intelligent, informed decisions about how they can help take care of it. And EE has the power to transform lives and society by informing, inspiring, and motivating action. So you notice it's not just like knowledge gains. It's really connecting and understanding students' place in their community, in the natural world as well, and motivating action and stewardship. It's also a key tool in creating healthier and more civically engaged communities. I really think of environmental education as interdisciplinary. If I'm explaining to my family or my parents, I'm an environmental educator, I'm sure I've got like grandpas and uncles who may picture me just hugging trees. I do love to hug trees. I'm just letting you know it's a lovely thing, and I like to climb them. but it's not just teaching about what type of tree this is. It's really interdisciplinary. It's connecting, the physical and even mental health of students to the natural world, how the natural world has an impact on them, even getting them outside to learn and how that has an increased impact in their learning outcomes. So it's really an interdisciplinary field and tool, and I really enjoy being part of it. So where does it happen? Like I said, it can happen in so many settings. It can happen in schools, it can happen after school programs, nature centers, zoos, neighborhoods, forests, business districts. And who does it serve? It really can be designed to meet the needs of diverse audiences, and it's described as serving learners from birth to gray. So most of you here probably work with a K through 12 setting. I know that's the audience that we serve a lot through NACEE, but we are also talking about the folks who are working at nature centers and doing family and community programs, or working with adults or senior centers or early childhood. So that's really the definition. If you aren't familiar with environmental education. So a little bit about NACEE itself. So I mentioned I'm the board president currently of the Nebraska Alliance for Conservation and Environmental Education. And the most important thing to understand about what this organization is it's the state affiliate of that North American Association for Environmental Education that I mentioned in the previous slide. So this NAAEE is just this wide, amazing, incredible organization. And each state, most states have a state affiliate of that, and we are that state affiliate. So our goal is to kind of take a lot of those resources and professional development and tools and really be the conduit to Nebraska and make sure Nebraskans themselves are getting these really great resources. And we seek to develop a community of practice for Nebraskans involved in environmental education. Anybody involved in environmental education, whether you're running an after-school nature club, whether you're a naturalist at a state park, there's so many different people who are actually can see themselves in that world, and we seek to develop that community of practice. So we do that in a few ways, and I'm going to post some links a little later, I think towards the end, just so I can access them for some of the things I'm talking about today. But one of the things we do to work towards that is we have 3 pretty incredible outputs right now. One is our NACEE listserv. That is something where you can sign up, and I think it reaches over like around 2,000 people. It may be 3,000 by now across the state. And you will see any kind of upcoming professional development opportunities, maybe some grant funding, lots of job postings, and events related to environmental education. And so it's a really great tool that we have. It's really a one-way communication. We're sending it out to the listserv, but people will email us and say, hey, can you add this to the listserv? And so it's a really great communication tool. Another thing we do is network building. And so in the past, we've hosted different network events for environmental education practitioners just to meet and discuss their practice. Some of those have been virtual, some of them in person. But the biggest thing that we've done very recently is the Nebraska Environmental Education Conference. So our first one was held virtually in 2022, And then our very first in-person was held in February 2023 at Mahoney State Park. I know some folks from this community were there, and it was really great to see, that connection, where a lot of us go to the Get Connected conference, and then I saw a lot of these folks come to this conference. So it was great. Our second annual conference is in February 2024. So I'd encourage anyone who would be interested into checking that out and potentially registering and coming up. It'll be at Ponca State Park. But really briefly overall for NACEE, we formed in 1992. It's a 501c3 organization, and it is created and maintained all through volunteers. There's a volunteer board. We've never had paid staff, but we've been around Nebraska for a while. And we're growing. In the last few years, we've grown tremendously, a lot of momentum, and we're able to serve our audience better. Speaking of growing, some of the things that we're hoping to roll out in 2024 are really relevant to this community here, and I hope that they are going to be helpful for a lot of people in Nebraska. So we've been working a lot with our regional partners in Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. So there's great resources out there, and with the support of NAAE. And we've been involved in some EPA and Pisces grants to roll out some of these outputs next year. We're hoping to put out an environmental education micro-credential courses. So right now we are currently piloting several courses across the region. We're in that piloting phase, and we're hoping to roll that out by next year. Some of those will include community engagement through Common Ground, climate change literacy, teaching in the outdoors, teaching environmental issues, and environmental justice. These courses are going to be asynchronous, which means you can take them as your pace. They'll be moderated, and you'll be able to get credit for these courses and add to your resume and your practice. Another thing we're going to roll out next year is the Guidelines of Excellence workshop. Guidelines of Excellence are these really great documents put together by NAAE and Stanford University and many other partners. And what they did was they put together essentially Guidelines of Excellence, a document of best practices, the latest up-to-date research on how we can elevate our practice in environmental education in different categories. So last year, the NACEE board got a grant and was able to bring a Guidelines of Excellence workshop leader down to Nebraska from Washington, and she then trained us, and so many of our NACEE board members are now trained to be able to give these workshops, and they come with these really great, like the physical guidelines handbooks. So we will hopefully be doing some of these workshops next year. Community engagement, early childhood, environmental education programs, K through 12 environmental education, and professional development of environmental educators. So those are just some things to be on the lookout next year. And then the big one that I previously mentioned, but just something to think about, is the second annual Nebraska Environmental Education Conference will be at Ponca State Park, February 28 and 29. We have 2 really fantastic keynotes confirmed, and over 28 presenters turn in their proposals and are confirmed from all across Nebraska. And I did see, for example, Dakota Staggs. I feel like he's very involved in this community. He's presenting again, and so I know there's some of that overlap between our 2 communities, and I'm really excited and looking forward to that. Okay, so that's my NACEE talk. Are there any questions about like what NACEE is or services we offer? I just put our website in the chat. So, okay, so seeing no questions, we'll get on to the fun stuff. So this is a little bit of a discussion, but I just want to know if you'd like to unmute or put it in the chat. How would you define learning? Or what does learning mean to you? How would you explain what it is? Sorry, Kim, you should have put a warning that my presentations come with discussions.
Gaining skills and knowledge.
Okay, gaining skills and knowledge. Excellent. That's good. Anybody else? see something in the chat. Learning is growing in your understanding. That's good, Sandra. Thank you. I like that one. Yeah, some good things to think about. I hear a lot. I hear a lot when I do these presentations of struggling, messing up, and moving forward. Ooh, okay, this is good. I think all three, like putting them together, that's getting really close to the definition. Excellent. Oh, one more. Gaining knowledge through information and experience. Excellent. It's very good. You hear so many different answers from, just gaining skills, learning more information. It's cool to hear that like you're struggling through. So we'll kind of go into this a little bit. Something to think about as we go to the next thing. But the next thing I want to do is, I have one more, sorry. Learning is different from teaching. As educators, we control the teaching, but not the learning. Wow. That's a mind blower, Sandra. I like that one. I might write that one down. I'm gonna have to think about that one later. That's very good. Well, we might discuss a little bit about this in these next few slides. Okay, let's see. So thinking about that, I wanted to share, this is one of my favorite slides, kids' perspectives on science. So I found this incredible paper a few years ago that interviewed kids and asked them different science questions. And so the paper was full of these amazing quotes. And I just want to read them. And I want to kind of ask you a little bit about how do you think they came to these thoughts? So one says, when they broke open molecules, they found they were only stuffed with atoms. But when they broke open atoms, they found them stuffed with explosions. When people run around and around in circles, we say they are crazy. When planets do it, we say they're orbiting. It's good, right? There's a tremendous weight pushing down on the center of the Earth because of so much population stomping around up there these days. I think that was an explanation for gravity. Oh, this is a good one. Many dead animals in the past changed to fossils, while others preferred to be oil. Most books now say our sun is a star, but it still knows how to change back into the sun in the daytime. I think this is the last one. There are 26 vitamins in all, but some of the letters are yet to be discovered. Finding them all means living forever.
Oh, wow.
So I know these are silly. I really like to often remember, including student perspective in my practice, because it helps me, understand their point of view. But how do you think they came up with some of these ideas here? Are you seeing anything here? How do you think they came up with these great theories? Anybody just unmute or chat.
Well, it's what they hear in their world or how they observe it. And then this is how they explain it. It's from what they're hearing and their little limited understanding of the world and what's going on. I don't know what. And that's how they explain it. Yeah.
Yeah. You see them kind of connecting different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't all connected, right? But that's okay. At least, they come up with some great stuff sometimes. And part of it's,
yeah,
like you said, is partially right, or that's a really good answer. I like that's a nice try. They do that a lot. And so you've got to encourage them to keep verbalizing it and coming up with their ideas, because you don't want them to just sit there, not say anything. Don't be afraid to say something, even if it's wrong. It's okay.
Absolutely, Lorna. This is great. And this is why we'll get to that. The reason why questions as an educator is such a good tool for a lot of what you just said. So really, so kind of just be thinking about that. And I know that many of you probably are fully aware of this being in the education field, but I really like to bring this to front and center of the two kind of historical views on learning. And so I'm going to do this really briefly because I want to get to the question part. But, historically, there was this kind of blank slate theory. And that theory is that learning is a process of just being filled with information. So I am the teacher, I'm the educator. The student has a blank slate. My job is to just pour my info into that brain and the learning happens, right? Teaching is a transmission of knowledge from instructor to student. It's one way. And luckily, lots of research, lots of evolved practice has led us to the understanding that that is not necessarily the case. There's the newer understanding of the clever minds theory, or you may have heard it called constructivism, where learning is a process. It's a process of learners adding to and connecting with and changing their ideas in their mind. So they are not blank slates. They come to our classrooms, our after school programs, wherever we practice, with a whole cognitive framework of their experience in the world so far and what they've engaged with. So in this case, teaching is not the transmission of knowledge one way. It's more a guiding learners to build their own understanding. And one way to think about this is the learning cycle. So again, I apologize. I'll do this really briefly, but I'm going to put some great links in the chat, so you can dive into this more if you'd like to. But part of the learning cycle is understanding that constructivism or clever minds, where we have to really engage with the learner's prior knowledge and help them come to their own understanding. Really briefly, it starts with an invitation, and that's what we're going to dive into today with questions. And so lighting the curiosity, setting the stage for learning, getting them ready, getting them excited, accessing their prior knowledge to the topic. And then next is exploration. So you start to explore. A lot of times in EE, it's hands-on exploration. And then concept invention. So you don't actually even teach, like, what is migration and give them that definition until this concept invention in the learning cycle, for example. Once you've introduced the concept, then you apply it through, in what we do a lot is games, play, and things like that in application. And then of course, reflection. So reflect on what you learned, discuss with each other, and you notice it's a cycle. It's not linear, it just continues. So that's a little bit, very brief overview of kind of that, leading to why questions are an important tool. So which scenario do you feel or do you believe would allow for greater learning to take place? I'm going to present you two scenarios, and just imagine maybe you're taking first graders on a little field trip at a nature center, and you're talking about pollinators. So imagine that, if you will. So scenario one, you come across this butterfly with these first graders and you say to them, this is a pollinator. You can tell because it has a long proboscis or tongue, and it's using it to drink the nectar from the flower right now. You can also see it has pollen on it if you look closely. Butterflies are important pollinators. So scenario one. Scenario two, gather them around. Can you find the creature on the flower? How many legs does it have? Is this an insect? What do you notice about the insect? What do you see it doing? Why do you think it's doing that? What does it remind you of? Is this a pollinator? How do pollinators help flowers? How might pollinators help humans? So, of course, this is really reduced and simplified, but what scenario do you think would lead to better learning outcomes? One or two? I know I'm just really like guiding this for you, but two, yeah.
Two's the way to go.
Two's the way to go, she says. Yep, I'm with you on that. So you can kind of see how questions can be such a good tool in that learning process. And thinking about questions, I want to kind of speak to two types of questions. I know a lot of times, I remember in school I learned open-ended and closed-ended, I believe. It's really similar here, how we're looking at it, but broad and narrow. So broad, there's no specific answer. It's really subjective. It requires that higher level thinking, that exploration, the observation, and personal reflection. Really helps them access that prior cognitive framework they have on the topic. And so then it promotes discussion and it promotes divergent thinking, which is really fantastic and even an equitable practice. And narrow questions, they have a specific answer. So they do have like a right or wrong answer. 4 + 4 is 8. That's a narrow question. Answer requires recall of information or facts, and then it promotes group response and it promotes convergent thinking. I just want to be clear that not one of these is better than the other, but it's really helpful in our practice to reflect on the intention of how we're using questions. So what are our goals with these questions? If your goal, so for broad question goals, if you are wanting the students to learn and figure things out and explore and discuss, broad questions are excellent. If you want to be able to include students' diverse and divergent viewpoints and perspectives, broad questions are great. Narrow questions, if you need to kind of recap and recall maybe information they learned earlier that day, narrow questions are great. It's a ability to review a topic. You're able as an educator to identify a gap maybe if you think all of them should know what a pollinator is by now. We've been learning about it for a few weeks, and you ask, and there's some gaps there, narrow questions will help with that. So something to note is that broad questions and narrow questions are equally good and useful tools. It is noted that most of the time in our education settings, narrow questions are used just because of the confines of timing and all these things, probably like closer to 80% of the time. And so narrow questions are kind of used more often. And so it's something to reflect on. How can we incorporate those broad questions more to get that divergent thinking? So knowing that, just quickly, can you identify in this set of questions, which ones are the narrow questions that you see? And you can just unmute, throw it out there.
Is it a pollinator? Isn't that a right or wrong answer?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. Is it an insect? How many legs? Very good. Is this a pollinator?
What do you notice about this insect? That's broad.
Yep.
What do you see it doing? That's broad. Why do you think it's doing it? That's broad. What does it remind you of? That's broad. Those are all broad.
Yeah, you got it. This is kind of what I put together. How do pollinators help flowers? It could be you might get a lot of different answers there, but there's probably wrong answers there too. But so there's your narrow questions, and then of course, Lorna, thank you. You can see the broad questions here. So you can see how it's a good mix of both questions in this line of inquiry, right? Something that I like to talk about a lot, I'm just checking the time, is a go-to broad question. So when you're engaging with students, I've said this before, I could probably take a group of like 20 fifth graders, hike in the woods with no materials whatsoever. But if I have some of these questions in my like mental back pocket, we could do a really incredible 45-minute program, right? So these are just some great examples of why do you think it's doing that? What are some similarities? What does this remind you of? What do you notice? Those are just really excellent questions to really get that invitation phase and getting their curiosity and learning what they already know about it. Kim, are you all right if I just go maybe like a few minutes over 12:30? Okay, awesome, thank you. So some of this kind of leads to something I like to reflect on a lot is what is our role as an educator or interpreters? And there's a really great website called Beatles. It's a Bettering Environmental Education, Teaching, Learning, and Science. So they put out these 3 roles to really reflect on in our practice as educators. And so I'm going to describe these 3 roles, and I'd like you to just raise your hand if you've ever received this, or raise your hand if you've ever been on the receive or been this role before, okay? Okay, sage on the stage. So in this role, instructor gives information and student receives it. Instructor is a recognized authority and keeper of the information. And education is the transmission of information from a single source to another. Has anyone been on the receiving end of sage on the stage? Yes. Has anyone ever played the sage on the stage role? I know I have. Yeah. Okay. All right. Another role. Entertainer. Learning should be fun and exciting. The focus is on the instructor's engaging performance and delivery of information. Students may be actively entertained, but might not be intellectually engaged. Has anyone ever been on the receiving end of the entertainer role? Yes. Has anyone ever been the entertainer role?
I don't think I'm very entertaining, but I've had some staff members that are entertaining. Very entertaining.
Good. Okay.
I mean, turkey zip lines for science club, that was pretty entertaining Tuesday night.
That's excellent. I'm very intrigued by that. And then the third role that they've identified is guide on the side. So learning is through shared inquiry and collaborating in investigations. The focus is on the thinking and the cognition of the student. Students express their ideas, expose conflicts, and are guided to either reinforce, build upon, or replace their ideas. Have you ever been on the receiving end of this role? Some of my best, if I'm reflecting honestly, some of my best like professors in college, after I learned about this, I was like, whoa, they were guides on the side, you know? Guide on the side is a role you're most comfortable with, Sandra, right there with you. Has anyone, played this role, guide on the side? So again, it's just like the broad and narrow questions, there's no, we're not trying to put subjective morality on one of these roles are better than the other, but it's really nice, I think, and helpful to just kind of sometimes reflect on what our role is as educators and just note, I think, at least for environmental education and inquiry learning, we do try to do guide on the side as much as we can. There's a time and place for sage on the stage, and there's of course a time and place for the entertainer as well. But it's a nice practice to be like thinking and reflecting on what is our role in this learning process with these students. I just really like this quote, putting it all together. Do not try to satisfy your vanity by teaching a great many things. Awaken people's curiosity. It is enough to open minds, do not overload them. Put there just a spark. If there is some good inflammable stuff, it will catch fire. I really like that quote. I think it speaks to kind of that guide on the side and like that role of like us, really asking the student's perspective and working with those questions. So that is all I have for you today. I know that was very quick. I'd like to drop some of those resources in the chat that I mentioned. But as I'm doing that, I just would love to hear from you. Any questions or reflections? Has your ideas changed? Have you ever thought about our role as educators? What might you use in any of these ideas in your programs or practice?
I feel like I'm pretty good at these open and these types of questioning. I'm always questioning kids, but getting my college students who are like 18 and 19 years old to ask these bigger, better questions. And they're just so limited in their ability to ask questions, to express, or try to get feedback from the kids. So yeah, how to teach them or guide them to be better at this is my dilemma always. Like they're very limited in their ability to do that in some cases not, but do you understand what I'm asking?
Absolutely. Yeah. Asking, I feel like we put a lot of emphasis in our culture and our practice and education as you need to have the right answer. And that's in adults, that's in students. And so it feels a bit countercultural to kind of reflect on what is our role. We're guide on the side. And it feels countercultural to practice, really thinking about how we ask those questions. Lorna, I put in the chat a few.
I see those. Are those all the resources you're going to put in? Are these all your resources?
They're
because then I'm going to save it, but I didn't want to save it until you had everything in there. So
okay,
is some of this stuff listed then? Are those on there?
Yeah, one sec. I'll put the rest in, but specifically, so yeah, save all those. So what I put in, those are all of them. Go ahead and copy and paste. But the learning cycle is on there, and so you can learn more about that. But the question handouts, you see that link. If you click that, that's an entire free open source train the trainer of how you can train others to help ask better questions, Lorna. Okay. So really awesome resources there, and it maybe could help you with that kind of challenge you mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other links I put are NAAE's website. They're linked to those guidelines of excellence. It's really a good link. And then of course, NACEE. You can join the listserv or check out that conference if you're interested. But yeah. Sandra says, I think asking questions is the most important skill for new staff to develop, and one that most of us can grow and improve too. I like that, Sandra. like I said, it does feel like this skill we take for granted that is a skill and is important and can be improved upon because there's such an emphasis of being correct and right, especially in front of students. If they ask you a question, it's like you have to say the right answer. But sometimes modeling uncertainty is just as powerful as trying to have the right answer. So yeah, thanks for the great discussion, everyone. I really appreciate it. Any last questions?
Amber, this has been so informative. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Amber.
much. I think these are all just great information and resources that any of our program leaders could use for staff professional development and
Yeah.
for us all to improve in our teaching
Yeah.
and learning.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Kim, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much, Amber. We appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.